You're driving alone at night. The road is empty. There's nothing but darkness and sand for miles and miles. Your phone has no signal. The radio plays only static. Then your car breaks down. You step outside into the cold desert air, and that's when you hear it. Footsteps coming from behind a rock. But here's the thing that will freeze your blood. The footsteps sound human, but the tracks you find the next morning have 6 toes, and they circle your car all night long. What you're about to hear are 5 real stories from real people who survived the most terrifying nights of their lives in the desert. These aren't made-up campfire stories. These aren't legends from the internet. These are true experiences that will make you never want to step foot in a desert again. Story 1. The thing that followed me home from the Mojave Desert. My name is Jason Mitchell. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a photographer from Los Angeles. What happened to me in October 2019 changed my life forever. I still can't sleep without checking my windows. I still can't look at desert photos without feeling sick, and I still wake up at 3 a.m. every night listening for those footsteps. Let me take you back to that day. It was October 15th, a Tuesday. I had just gone through a bad breakup. Sarah, my girlfriend of 3 years, had left me for someone else. I needed to get away. I needed to clear my head. So I decided to do what I always did when life got hard. I went to the desert with my camera. The Mojave Desert had always been my escape. There's something about that empty space that makes your problems feel small. I'd been there dozens of times before. I knew the good spots. I knew where to camp. I knew how to stay safe. Or at least, I thought I did. I packed my truck with all my camping gear, 2 gallons of water, enough food for 3 days, my tent, my sleeping bag, my camera equipment, and most importantly, my grandfather's hunting knife. He gave it to me before he died and told me to always carry it when I'm alone. That knife saved my life, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I drove out around 2 in the afternoon. The spot I had in mind was about 40 miles from the nearest town. It was this beautiful, flat area surrounded by Joshua trees, perfect for star photography. No light pollution for miles. Just me, the stars, and the silence. I arrived around 4. The sun was still high, but starting to turn that beautiful golden color. I set up my tent first. It was one of those expensive 4-season tents. Bright orange. Easy to spot from a distance. That detail becomes important later. After setting up camp, I walked around taking photos. The light was perfect. The Joshua trees created these amazing shadows. Everything was exactly what I needed. Peaceful, quiet, healing. As the sun started to set, I made myself a simple dinner. Just some canned soup heated on my portable stove. I remember sitting there, eating my soup, watching the sky turn from orange to pink to purple. I felt good for the first time in weeks. I felt like myself again by 8 o'clock. It was completely dark. And when I say dark, I mean the kind of darkness you never experience in the city. The kind where you can't see your hand in front of your face without a flashlight. But the stars. Oh man, the stars were incredible. Like someone had thrown diamond dust across black velvet. I set up my camera on its tripod and started taking long exposure shots. Each photo took about 30 seconds to capture. During those 30 seconds, I had to stay perfectly still so I wouldn't shake the camera. It was during one of these 30-second periods that I first heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone was trying to walk quietly but couldn't help making noise in the sandy ground. They were coming from somewhere behind me. Maybe 30 feet away, maybe less. My first thought was that another camper had shown up. It happens sometimes. People see your fire or your tent and come over to say hello. So I called out, "Hello, someone there? I'm just doing some photography. You're welcome to come say hi." The footsteps stopped immediately. Complete silence, not even wind, nothing. I waited for a response. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, nothing. I grabbed my flashlight. It was one of those really powerful LED ones that can light up something 200 feet away. I turned around and swept the beam across the desert, empty. Just sand and rocks and Joshua trees making weird shadows. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just an animal. Coyotes are common in the Mojave. So are rabbits and snakes. The desert is full of life at night. That's what I told myself as I went back to my camera. But 20 minutes later, the footsteps returned. This time, they were circling my campsite, round and round, maintaining the exact same distance from my tent. About 30 feet out. Always 30 feet. Never closer. Never farther. And here's what made my skin crawl. The pattern was too perfect, too consistent. Animals don't walk in perfect circles. They wander. They stop to sniff things. They change direction. These footsteps never varied. Same speed, same distance, same rhythm. Step, 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 like something was patrol. Like something was studying me. I stood up and grabbed my flashlight again. This time I was ready. I waited until I could hear the footsteps directly in front of me. Then I hit the button. The beam shot out into the darkness. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But the footsteps didn't stop. They kept going. I could hear them clearly, maybe 20 feet from where my light was shining. Whatever was making those sounds was either invisible or really good at hiding. That's when I noticed my camera was still taking photos. It was set to take a picture every 30 seconds, automatically. I had been doing a time-lapse of the stars. Later, when I looked at those photos, I found something that still makes me sick to think about. In 3 of the frames, there's a figure. It's blurry because of the long exposure, but it's definitely there. Tall, maybe 7 feet, thin, and in one photo, you can see its eyes. They're reflecting the small red light from my camera, like a cat's eyes, but higher off the ground than any animal's eyes should be. But I didn't know about the photos yet. At that moment, I was just standing there, sweeping my flashlight back and forth, trying to find whatever was circling me. The footsteps continued for another 10 minutes. Then they stopped, just stopped, mid-step. The silence that followed was worse than the footsteps, because now I didn't know where it was. Was it still circling? Was it coming closer? Was it right behind me? I slowly turned in a complete circle, flashlight held out like a weapon. Nothing. The desert looked empty, but I could feel it. You know that feeling when someone is watching you? That tingle on the back of your neck? That feeling was so strong it made me nauseous. I decided to get in my tent. I know that sounds stupid. A thin piece of fabric isn't protection from anything, but it was better than standing out in the open. I zipped myself inside and sat there, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, listening. For an hour, nothing happened. I started to relax a little. Maybe whatever it was had left. Maybe it was just curious, and now it was gone. Maybe I could actually get some sleep. Then I heard breathing, heavy, raspy, like someone with really bad asthma. And it was right outside my tent. I could see the shadow through the orange fabric. Something large was standing there, just breathing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I was frozen with fear. The breathing continued, in and out, in and out. So close, I could almost feel the warmth through the tent wall. Then it spoke. I swear to you, this thing spoke. But the voice was wrong. It sounded like someone had recorded a human voice and played it back at the wrong speed. Too low, too slow. And it said my name, Yaassin. How did it know my name? I hadn't told anyone where I was going. There was no way anyone could know I was out there. But it knew my name. Yaassin, come outside, Yaassin. The voice moved around the tent as it spoke. First at the door, then by my feet, then right behind my head, like it was circling again, but closer now. So close, I gripped my knife tighter. If this thing tried to come into my tent, I was ready to fight. I didn't care what it was. I wasn't going down without a fight. The breathing got heavier, more excited, like a dog that knows it's about to get fed. Then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. Scratching. Long, deliberate scratches against the tent fabric. Not trying to tear it. Just letting me know it could if it wanted to. This went on for what felt like hours, but was probably 30 minutes. Breathing, scratching, calling my name in that horrible, slow voice. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. Complete silence. I sat there for the rest of the night, unable to move, unable to think, just waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. When the first light of dawn finally appeared, I carefully unzipped my tent and looked outside. What I saw made me pack up and leave immediately. There were footprints, hundreds of them. They circled my tent over and over, so many times that they'd worn a path in the sand. But here's the impossible part. Each footprint had 6 toes, and they were huge. Maybe size 15 or 16, but shaped wrong. The toes were too long to spread out, like whatever made them wasn't quite human. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the message. Written in the sand, in letters 10 feet tall, was my full name. My middle name included Jason Andrew Mitchell. And underneath, in smaller letters, see you soon. I threw everything in my truck and drove out of there so fast I left dust clouds behind me. I didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station on the highway. Bright lights, other people, safety. But here's the thing that still keeps me awake at night. When I developed the photos from my camera, there were more images I didn't take. Images of me sleeping in my tent from previous camping trips. Images of my apartment building. Images of my bedroom window from the outside. Whatever was in the desert that night, it had been watching me for a long time, and according to its message, it's not done with me yet. I moved apartments, changed jobs, even legally changed my name. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear those footsteps, still hear that breathing, still hear that voice calling a name that isn't mine anymore. The Mojave Desert is beautiful during the day, but at night, something else owns it. Something that knows your name, something that watches, something that waits. And if you're unlucky enough to meet it, it will follow you home. Story 2: The Shadow, People of the Sahara. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I have a PhD in archaeology from Oxford University. I've been on digs all over the world: Egypt, Peru, Cambodia. I'm telling you this so you understand that I'm not someone who believes in ghosts or curses or any of that nonsense. I'm a scientist. I believe in facts and evidence. But what happened in the Sahara Desert in 2021 made me question everything. I thought I knew about the world. I was part of a team investigating reports of an undiscovered tomb in southern Egypt. The Egyptian government had given us special permission to excavate in an area that's usually off-limits to foreigners. We should have asked why it was off. We should have listened when the local guides tried to warn us. But we were too excited about the discovery to pay attention to what they called old superstitions. Our team consisted of 6 researchers, including myself. There was Dr. James Harrison from Cambridge, Dr. Maria Santos from Barcelona, Dr. Ahmed Hassan from Cairo University, and 2 graduate students, Emma and David. We also had 4 local guides and 2 security guards. 12 people total. Safety in numbers, we thought. The site was about 200 kilometers from the nearest town. Nothing but sand and rocks for miles in every direction. The heat during the day was unbearable. Over 50 degrees Celsius. That's about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. But at night, it dropped to near freezing. The desert is a place of extremes. We set up our base camp on the first day. 6 tents arranged in a circle. A mess tent in the middle. Generator for power. Satellite phone for emergencies. Everything organized and professional. We were prepared for everything. Or so we thought. The first 2 days were just surveying and mapping, using ground-penetrating radar to see what was beneath the sand. On the 3rd day, we found it. A stone structure about 10 meters below the surface. The radar showed a chamber, maybe multiple chambers. Our excitement was through the roof. We started digging immediately. The sand was loose on top, but became hard-packed as we went deeper. By evening of the 3rd day, we'd reached the stone. It was black granite, which was unusual for this area. Most tombs were made from limestone or sandstone. Black granite had to be brought from hundreds of miles away. This meant whoever was buried here was important, very important. That night, things started to get weird. It began with the dreams. Everyone in the camp had the same dream. We were standing in a dark room. The walls were covered in hieroglyphs that seemed to move and shift. In the center of the room was a tall figure wrapped in black cloth. It didn't move, but we could feel it watching us. And there was this sound, like whispering, but in a language that hurt to hear. When we woke up, our ears were ringing. Dr. Hassan was the most disturbed by this. He said he recognized some of the hieroglyphs from the dream. They were real symbols, but from a period of Egyptian history that's poorly documented. A time that most Egyptologists call the Dark Period because so little is known about it. The next morning, we continued digging. We found the entrance to the chamber around noon. It was sealed with a massive stone slab covered in hieroglyphs. Dr. Hassan translated them for us, though his hands were shaking as he did. Here lies the forgotten one, he who speaks to shadows, he who walks between worlds. Let no living soul disturb his rest, For he is not dead, but waiting. The shadows serve him still. The local guides wanted to leave immediately. They said this was a marked place, cursed, forbidden. They told us stories about other expeditions that had come here and never returned. But we didn't listen. We were scientists. We didn't believe in curses. We broke the seal. The moment the stone slab moved, the temperature dropped. I mean dropped instantly. From 50 degrees to maybe 10 degrees in seconds. Our breath came out in clouds. The locals started praying. Even the security guards looked nervous. Inside the chamber was unlike any tomb I'd ever seen. The walls were covered in that same black granite, polished to a mirror finish. But the hieroglyphs carved into them seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And in the center of the room was not a sarcophagus, but a statue. It was about 7 feet tall, carved from a single piece of black stone. But this wasn't granite. It was something else. Something that seemed to pulse with its own dark energy. The statue depicted a humanoid figure, but elongated, stretched. Its limbs were too long, with too many joints. Its head was shaped wrong, like someone had pulled it upward. And where its face should be, there was just smooth stone. But the most disturbing thing was what was around the statue. Bodies, mummified bodies. Dozens of them, arranged in a circle, all facing the statue, and they weren't ancient. Some of them were wearing modern clothes, jeans, t-shirts. One had a digital watch still on its wrist. Emma screamed. David threw up. Even Dr. Harrison, who'd been on hundreds of digs, went pale. We should have left right then, should have sealed the chamber and never looked back. But archaeological curiosity is a powerful thing. We documented everything, took photos, made sketches, collected samples. The whole time, the local guides stood outside, refusing to enter. They kept saying the same word over and over, Netjer. It means God in ancient Egyptian, but also demon. Depends on the context. That night, the shadows came. It started around midnight. Hassan was on watch. He started screaming, pointing at the desert. We all rushed out to see what was wrong. He kept saying, "They move. The shadows move." In Arabic, at first, we saw nothing unusual. Just normal shadows cast by our tents and equipment in the moonlight. Then Ahmed grabbed my arm and pointed. One shadow was moving against the light, sliding across the sand in a direction that made no sense based on where the moon was. Then we saw another, and another. Shadows without sources, moving independently, converging on our camp. We retreated to the mess tent, all 12 of us huddled together, flashlights pointing outward. But light didn't stop them. The shadows passed right through the tent, walls like they weren't there, and when they touched you, how do I describe what it felt like? It was cold, but more than cold. It was like having your life force drained, your memories examined, your fears exposed. When a shadow passed through me, I saw things, ancient things, impossible things. I saw the statue when it was alive, because it had been alive. It was some kind of being that existed before human civilization. It had ruled here when the Sahara was green. It had demanded sacrifices, human sacrifices. And when it was finally defeated and turned to stone, its servants, the shadows, remained loyal, waiting for someone to break the seal, waiting to serve again. The shadows circled us all night. whispering in that painful language from our dreams. Sometimes they would take form, becoming three-dimensional, showing us glimpses of that elongated figure from the statue. Its face was the worst part. When you finally saw its face, it had too many eyes. Eyes in places eyes shouldn't be. And they were human eyes. Collected from its victims over millennia, Hassan was the first to break. Around 3 a.m., he suddenly stood up and walked out of the tent. We tried to stop him, but he was surprisingly strong. He walked straight to the chamber and descended into it. We heard him speaking in ancient Egyptian, then in other languages none of us recognized. Then silence. When the sun finally rose, the shadows retreated. We found Hassan in the chamber, kneeling before the statue. He was alive, but changed. His eyes had turned completely black. No whites, no iris, just black. And when he spoke, it wasn't his voice. It was older, deeper, like something was using him as a puppet. He told us the statue wanted to leave. It had been imprisoned here for thousands of years, and now it wanted to go out into the world. It needed carriers, vessels. We ran. Left everything behind. The equipment, the artifacts, our research. We just ran. Made it to the vehicles and drove. Hassan followed us, walking, not running, walking, but somehow keeping pace with the vehicles. That's not possible, but it happened. The GPS stopped working. Then the satellite phone. Then the engines started failing. We were lost in the Sahara with limited water and a possessed colleague following us. And night was coming again. I don't remember much about the second night. The shadows were stronger outside the tomb. They didn't just pass through us anymore. They entered us, showed us visions of what the world would become if the statue was freed. Cities consumed by darkness. People turned into shadow servants. The sun itself dimmed until eternal night fell by morning. 3 more of our team were changed. Black eyes, speaking in harmony, all saying the same thing. Join us. Serve the forgotten one. The rest of us made a desperate decision. Dr. Harrison had brought explosives for removing large rocks. We had to destroy the statue. It was the only way we drove back to the site. The possessed team members didn't try to stop us. They just watched with those black eyes, smiling. Like they knew something, we de-eyed Harrison set the charges, while Maria and I held off the shadows with flares. Fire seemed to slow them down, though it didn't stop them. Emma and David had to physically restrain the possessed team members, who kept trying to remove the explosives. When the charges detonated, the sound was unlike any explosion I'd heard. It was mixed with screaming. Thousands of voices screaming in reverse. The statue shattered, and black liquid poured out. Not oil, something alive. Something that evaporated in the sunlight, but left the sand beneath it, gray and dead. The possessed team members collapsed immediately. When they woke up, they had no memory of what happened. Their eyes were normal again. But Hassan never woke up. The possession had been too long, too deep. It had burned out his mind. We made it back to civilization, reported the tomb as structurally unstable, and had it officially sealed. The Egyptian government closed the entire area, officially for environmental protection. Unofficially, they brought in religious leaders from multiple faiths to perform cleansing rituals. But sometimes, on very dark nights, I still see them, the shadows, moving independently, watching, waiting, because even though we destroyed the statue, I don't think we destroyed what was inside it. I think we just released it, and now it's out there somewhere, looking for a new vessel, a new way to enter our world. If you ever see shadows moving against the light, don't investigate. Don't try to understand, just run. Because some things are meant to stay buried. Some things are meant to be forgotten. And some prisons are built for very good reasons. Story 3, They Don't Speak, about skin-walkers. My name is Marcus Rodriguez. My wife Jennifer and I learned the hard way that some roads should never be traveled at night. Some territories should never be crossed. And some legends are warnings, not stories. It was March 2020. The world was going crazy with the pandemic, but we had to move. I'd lost my job in Texas, and I'd found a new one in California. We had no choice but to pack everything up and drive across the country. We rented a big moving truck and planned to drive straight through, taking turns sleeping. We were making good time until we hit New Mexico. It was getting late, maybe 10 at night, and we were exhausted. The GPS showed 2 routes to get through Arizona. The main highway would take 5 hours, but there was a shortcut through Navajo Nation that would save us 2 hours. Highway 160. We took the shortcut. That was our first mistake. The road was empty, completely empty. We didn't see another car for an hour. Just our headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating the blacktop and the occasional Joshua tree or rock formation. Jennifer was sleeping in the passenger seat. I had the radio on, but all I could get was static and sometimes faint Native American music that seemed to drift in and out like it was coming from very far away. About an hour into the drive, I saw the first dead animal. It was a deer, torn apart on the side of the road. Nothing unusual about roadkill, except for how it was arranged. The pieces were laid out in a pattern, the head pointing east, the legs arranged in a symbol I didn't recognize, the organs placed in specific positions. It was deliberate, intentional. I didn't wake Jennifer. No point in worrying her. But I did speed up a little. 10 miles later, another dead animal. A coyote this time. Same type of arrangement, same careful positioning. This time I could see the blood was fresh, still wet. Whatever had done this had done it recently. That's when I noticed the moving truck wasn't behind us anymore. We'd been traveling together, staying close, because Jennifer had all the directions and contact information for our new apartment. I tried calling the driver. No signal. Not even emergency calls would go through. I pulled over to wait, turned on the hazard lights. That was our second mistake. Jennifer woke up when we stopped. "Why are we stopped?" she asked. "Lost the moving truck. Waiting for them to catch up." She looked around at the empty desert. "This place feels wrong," she said. "Can we wait somewhere else?" Before I could answer, she grabbed my arm hard. "Marcus, there's something out there." I looked where she was pointing. About 50 feet from the car, something was moving through the sagebrush. It looked like a large dog or a wolf, but it moved wrong. Too fluid, like its joints bent in ways they shouldn't. "It's just a coyote," I said. But even I didn't believe it. The thing stood up. "I need you to understand." This thing that had been on 4 legs, that had looked like an animal, stood up on 2 legs like a person. It was at least 7 feet tall and it was wearing something over its head, fur or skin. In the darkness, I couldn't tell which dot. It stood there, swaying slightly, watching our car. Then it smiled. I could see its teeth in the darkness. Human teeth in what should have been an animal face. I started the car, or tried to. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. I tried again. Nothing. The electronics flickered and went dark. No lights, no radio, nothing. The thing started walking toward us. Not running, walking, slow and deliberate. As it got closer, I could see more details that made my stomach turn. Human hands extending from what looked like wolf paws. Human eyes in a canine skull. Fur that seemed to shift and move like it was alive. It circled our car. I could hear its breathing, rough and wet. It dragged its fingers along the metal, leaving scratches. It pressed its face against Jennifer's window, fogging up the glass. This close, we could see the skin it was wearing didn't fit right. It was like a costume made of dead animals, badly stitched together. And underneath, glimpses of something else. Something that might have been human once. It spoke. In perfect English. In a voice that sounded like someone talking through water. Open the door. I need help. I'm lost. The words didn't match the movement of its mouth. Like a badly dubbed movie. Please, it said. I'm so cold. Let me in. Jennifer was crying silently, gripping my hand so hard it hurt. I held my breath, afraid that even breathing too loud would provoke it. The thing circled our car 3 more times, sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes dropping to all 4s. It would tap on the windows with fingers that were too long. It would whisper our names, though we'd never told it who we were. Marcus, Jennifer, I know you. I've been waiting for you. This is my road. You have to pay the toll. It knew things about us. Personal things. It mentioned my mother's maiden name, the town where Jennifer grew up, our dog's name from when we were kids. Information it couldn't possibly know. Then the headlights appeared in the distance. The moving truck. The creature made a sound I'll never forget, like someone screaming underwater while laughing. It ran away, but the way it moved was impossible. Like someone playing a video in reverse. Joints bending wrong. Too fast and too slow at the same time. The truck pulled up behind us. Our car started immediately. The driver said he'd been following us the whole time, never lost sight of us. But according to our watches, we'd been stopped for 45 minutes. According to him, it had been less than 5 minutes. We drove the rest of the night without stopping. When the sun came up, we were out of Navajo Nation and stopped at a diner in Flagstaff. An old Native American man was sitting at the counter. He took one look at us and said, "You saw one, didn't you?" I nodded. "You're lucky," he said. "They don't usually let people leave. That road, Highway 160, it belongs to them after dark. Has 400 of years. The thing you saw, we don't speak its name. To speak of it is to invite it. But you know what it was." He was right. I knew. We both knew. It was a witch that wears the skins of animals and can take any form. They hunt on certain roads. They collect souls. And once they know your scent, they never forget. It lets you go for a reason, the old man said. Sometimes they mark people, follow them, watch them. You might see it again, in a different form, in a different place, but you'll know it's the same one. They never forget a scent. He was right about that too. Since that night, things have been following us. We'll be driving and see a deer standing on two legs by the side of the road. We'll be walking our dog and notice a coyote that moves too much like a person. Once, I swear I saw a man wearing what looked like a dog suit, badly made from real dog skin. Standing at the end of our street at 3 a.m., we've moved 3 times since then. It doesn't matter. They always find us. They never approach. They just watch, waiting for something. We don't know what. We've tried everything. Sage smudging, religious blessings, protection symbols. Nothing works. Because this isn't about spirituality or faith. This is about something older. Something that owns certain places and certain roads. Something that modern people have forgotten to fear. If you ever drive through Navajo Nation, especially on Highway 160, follow these rules. Don't drive at night. Don't stop for anything. Don't look at dead animals on the road. And if you see something that looks like an animal but moves like a person, don't acknowledge it. Don't speak to it. Don't even look at it directly, because skinwalkers are real. They're out there right now, walking roads that belong to them, wearing faces that aren't their own, speaking in voices they've stolen, hunting for people who don't know the rules, and once they mark you, you belong to them forever. Story 4. The Outback's Ancient Secret. My name is Tom Winters. I'm from Manchester, England, and I used to think the scariest thing in Australia was the spiders and snakes. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The scariest things in Australia are much, much older than any spider, and they've been waiting in the outback for longer than human civilization has existed. It was July 2022. I'd saved up 4 years to take a proper gap year adventure in Australia. Not just the tourist spots like Sydney and the Gold Coast. I wanted the real Australia, the outback, the red centre, the places tourists don't go. I rented a proper for WD from Alice Springs, loaded it with supplies, water, food, camping gear, satellite phone, GPS beacon, the works. The rental company gave me all the safety lectures. Stay on marked roads. Carry extra water. Don't go anywhere alone. Tell someone your plans. I followed most of their advice. But there was this place I'd heard about in a pub. An old drunk guy mentioned it. Dead Heart Valley. He said it was the most beautiful place in the outback, but also the strangest. He said the Aboriginal people won't go there. Haven't for thousands of years. When I asked why, he just laughed and ordered another beer. I should have listened to that warning. Should have understood that when the indigenous people, who've lived somewhere for 60,000 years, avoid a place, there's probably a good reason. But I was young and stupid and thought I was invincible. I found Dead Heart Valley on day 3 of my trip. It wasn't on any official map, but I had rough coordinates from that drunk guy. The moment I drove into the valley, I knew it was special. The rocks were this incredible deep red color, like dried blood, white sand that sparkled in the sun. Ghost gum trees twisted into shapes that looked like screaming faces, and bones. So many bones. At first, I thought it was just a natural animal graveyard. Places like that exist. Animals go there to die for some reason science doesn't fully understand. But these bones were different. They were arranged, sorted by type. Skulls in one area, ribs in another. Leg bones arranged in patterns that hurt to look at. I set up camp near what used to be a watering hole. The ground was cracked and dry, making patterns that looked almost like writing, like the earth itself was trying to tell a story. As I was setting up my tent, I noticed the caves. The entire cliff face was full of them. Dozens of dark openings at various heights. Some you could walk into. Others were 30 feet up the cliff face. All of them perfectly round, like they'd been carved rather than formed naturally. Curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my torch and walked to the nearest cave. The entrance was about 2 meters high and perfectly circular. Inside, the walls were smooth, too smooth for natural erosion, and there were paintings, but these weren't like the Aboriginal art I'd seen in museums. These were different, older, much older. They showed tall, thin figures with too many joints in their limbs. Their heads were elongated, pulled upward like someone had stretched them, and their eyes. They'd used some kind of reflective material for the eyes, so they seemed to follow you as you moved. The paintings told a story. These tall beings came from somewhere else. The paintings showed them arriving in spheres of light. They showed them teaching humans things, building things, and then they showed them going underground, into the caves, waiting. The creepiest part was the newest paintings. They were clearly done in the same style, but with modern paint, recent. They showed the same tall beings, but now they were watching modern humans, cars, planes, cities, like they'd been observing us this whole time. I took photos and went back to my camp. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and red. I made a fire and cooked some sausages. Normal camping stuff. Trying to convince myself those paintings were just weird art from some local eccentric. That's when the singing started. It came from the caves. All of them at once. But it wasn't normal singing. The pitch kept changing. Too high for human voices, then too low. Sometimes it sounded like multiple voices, sometimes just one. It was hypnotic, beautiful in a way that made your teeth hurt. I sat by my fire, trying to ignore it, but the singing got into my head. I found myself humming along, even though I didn't know the melody. My body wanted to stand up and walk toward the caves. It took actual physical effort to stay seated. The singing continued for an hour. Then it stopped. Cut off mid-note, like someone had hit a switch. The silence was worse than the singing, because now I could feel them watching. I couldn't see anything, but I knew they were there, in the caves. Hundreds of eyes watching me from the darkness. Then the lights appeared, pale blue spheres, exactly like in the cave paintings. They emerged from the caves, floating about 2 meters off the ground. 1, then 5, then dozens. They moved in patterns that seemed planned, coordinated, like a dance or a ritual. As they got closer to my camp, I could see shapes inside them. Those same elongated figures from the paintings. But these were real, living, moving. They were impossibly thin, like someone had stretched a person to twice their normal height without adding any mass. Their skin was gray-white, almost translucent. I could see dark shapes moving under it, like their organs were in the wrong places. Their arms had too many elbows, their fingers too many joints, but their faces were the worst part. Almost human, but stretched vertically. And their eyes, completely human eyes in those distorted faces. Blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes, like they'd collected them. They formed a circle around my camp, still inside their blue spheres of light. They didn't speak, but I could hear them in my mind. Not words exactly, more like feelings and images pushed directly into my brain. They showed me things. The earth before humans. Cities that shouldn't have existed. Technologies that we haven't invented yet. Or maybe that we've forgotten. They showed me thousands of years passing in seconds. Civilizations rising and falling. And always they were there, underground, watching, waiting. Then they showed me why they were waiting. Something is coming. Something from wherever they originally came from. Something they're either hiding from or waiting for. I couldn't tell which. But when it arrives, humanity will change forever. Or end. The images weren't clear. One of them floated closer. It reached out with a hand that had too many fingers. It touched my forehead. The touch was cold and electric at the same time. More images flooded my mind. I saw myself leaving, driving away, never speaking of this place. And I saw what would happen if I didn't leave. If I stayed, I would become like them, stretched, changed. Another guardian of this ancient secret, I understood. This was a warning and an offer. Leave now and never come back, or stay and become something else. I chose to leave. I packed up my camp in the dark, those blue lights watching me the whole time. When I started my truck, they floated backward, returning to their caves. As I drove out of the valley, I looked in my rear-view mirror. The lights were gone. The valley looked empty. But I knew better. When I got back to Alice Springs, I tried to tell people what I'd seen. Most thought I was crazy or had heat stroke. But one old Aboriginal man listened to my whole story without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded. My people have stories, he said. Old stories, older than memory, about the tall ones who came before, who taught us things we shouldn't have known, who went underground when the sky burned. We don't go to their places. We don't speak of them because they're not gone. They're waiting. Waiting for what? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. For the sky to burn again. I left Australia the next week. Couldn't stay. Every night I dreamed of those elongated faces, those human eyes in wrong bodies. Sometimes I wake up and my body feels wrong, like it's being stretched, like something is pulling me upward, trying to make me like them. I've researched since then, found reports of similar beings all over the world, always in remote places, always underground, always watching, waiting, there in the Sahara, the Gobi, the Atacama, Antarctica, places humans don't go, or shouldn't go. They're preparing for something, or hiding from something, maybe both. And we're caught in the middle, not even knowing they exist. But they do exist. They're out there right now, in their caves, in their spheres of light, watching us through human eyes they've collected over millennia, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves, or waiting for something worse to arrive. Story 5. The Death Valley Vanishing. Let me tell you about the last story. This one still gives me nightmares. It happened just last year, in August 2023, and it involves something so impossible that the Park Service still won't talk about it. They covered it up. They lied to the families. They lied to everyone. But I know someone who was there. Someone who saw everything. Her name is Rachel Summers. She's been a park ranger at Death Valley National Park for 15 years. She's seen people die from heat. She's found lost hikers, She's dealt with accidents and emergencies. But what happened that August morning broke something inside her. She quit her job 3 weeks later. She moved to Alaska, as far from the desert as she could get. When I finally tracked her down and convinced her to talk to me, she was shaking before she even started speaking. This is what she told me. It started with a simple phone call. A normal Tuesday morning. The temperature was already hitting 110 degrees at 9 in the morning. By noon, it would reach 130. That's normal for Death Valley in August. It's the hottest place on Earth. People die there every summer. They underestimate the heat. They don't bring enough water. They get confused. They wander off. They die. But this family wasn't like that. The Morrison family. David and Karen Morrison, both 42 years old. Their twin daughters, Emma and Sophia, both 15. They were experienced hikers. They had proper gear. They started their hike at 5 in the morning when it was still cool. They told the hotel exactly where they were going. They had GPS trackers. They did everything right. Everything by noon. They hadn't come back. Their car was still sitting in the parking lot at Mesquite Flat Sand Dunes, empty. The hotel called the Park Service. That's when Rachel and her team got involved. 4 rangers went out. Rachel, Mike Patterson, James Chen, and Lisa Rodriguez. All experienced. All trained for desert rescue. They had water, medical supplies, radios, everything they needed. They thought it would be simple. Find the family, give them water, bring them back. Maybe someone twisted an ankle. Maybe they got lost, even with the GPS. Simple stuff. They were wrong. So very, very wrong. The footprints were easy to find at first. 4 sets of tracks in the sand. 2 adults, 2 teenagers, walking in a straight line away from the parking area, heading toward a rock formation about 2 miles out. The tracks were fresh, maybe 3 hours old. The family should have been easy to find. But 1 mile into the search, something changed. Rachel was leading, following the footprints, when suddenly she stopped. The others caught up and saw what she was looking at. The footprints just ended, not covered by wind, not swept away. They just stopped. Like the family had been lifted into the sky. Mike said maybe they climbed onto rocks. But there were no rocks nearby. James suggested they backtracked. But backtrack to where? Lisa thought maybe the wind covered some tracks. But there was no wind that morning. None at all. They spread out in a search pattern. Standard procedure. Stay within shouting distance. Look for any sign, footprints, clothing, anything. The sun was directly overhead now. The heat was crushing. Even with their training and equipment, they were struggling. The air itself felt heavy, like breathing soup. That's when Mike found the first item. He called out, and they all came running. It was a shoe, a pink and white Nike sneaker, size 7, teen girl size. But here's where things got weird. The shoe looked old, really old, like it had been in the desert for 20 years. The rubber was cracked and falling apart. The fabric was bleached white by the sun. The laces were brittle and broke when Mike picked it up, but Emma Morrison had been wearing pink and white Nikes, brand new ones. Her mother had posted a photo on Facebook that morning before the hike. Same shoes. Exact same shoes, but new. This shoe was the same but aged by decades in just a few hours. They kept searching. 10 minutes later, James found a water bottle. Hydro Flask brand. blue. But like the shoe, it was destroyed by age. The paint was gone. The metal was pitted. The cap was seized shut with rust. But David Morrison had been carrying a blue hydro flask, bought it the day before at the visitor center. Rachel had seen the receipt later. More items appeared. A hat yellowed and falling apart. A pair of sunglasses, the plastic warped and melted. A phone, the screen cracked and clouded like it had been sandblasted for years. All belonging to the Morrison family, all aged by decades. Then Lisa started screaming. Rachel ran toward her. Lisa was standing at the edge of a small depression in the sand, her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. Rachel reached her and looked down, and what she saw didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. The Morrison family was there, all four of them, but they were mummified. Their skin was leather. Their clothes were rags. Their hair was gone. They looked like they'd been dead in the desert for 50 years, maybe more. The bodies were arranged in a perfect circle, sitting cross-legged, holding hands. Their heads were bowed forward like they were praying or sleeping. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Rachel recognized them. Even mummified, she could see David's distinctive nose, Karen's wedding ring, the twins' matching friendship bracelets. It was them. But it was impossible. They'd been alive 6 hours ago. You don't mummify in 6 hours. You don't age 50 years in a morning. Mike called for backup on the radio. But the radio wasn't working right. Instead of dispatch, they heard voices. Hundreds of voices, speaking in languages none of them recognized, all saying the same thing, over and over. Rachel couldn't understand the words, but somehow she knew what they meant. The door is open. The door is open. The door is open. Then the bodies moved. Not all at once. First, David's head lifted, slowly, like he was waking up from a long sleep. His eyes opened. But they weren't human eyes anymore. They were black, completely black. No white parts, no color, just empty black holes where eyes should be. He looked at Rachel and smiled. His lips cracked and bled as they moved. Then Karen's head lifted, same black eyes, same smile. Then the twins, all four of them, staring at the rangers with those horrible black eyes, smiling with mouths that bled. They spoke, all four at once, the same words from four mouths, but the voices weren't theirs. The voice was old, ancient. It came from somewhere else, somewhere far away, using their bodies like puppets. "We've been waiting for you," they said. "We've been waiting so long. Time doesn't work here. Yesterday is tomorrow. Tomorrow was last year. We've been dead for decades. We've been alive for minutes. Both are true. Neither are true." The bodies stood up all at once, like marionettes pulled by strings. Their movements were wrong, jerky, unnatural. Bones that should have been brittle from mummification worked perfectly. Skin that should have torn stayed intact. They started walking toward the rangers, still holding hands, still moving in perfect sync. "You want to know what happened," they said, their four voices becoming one voice. "We can show you. Step through the door. It's right here. It's always been here. The desert knows. The desert remembers." The desert takes. Mike grabbed Rachel's arm. "Run," he whispered. "Just run." They ran. All four rangers turned and ran back toward their vehicle. But as they ran, the air changed. It became thick, like running through water. Every step was harder than the last. Rachel looked back once and saw the Morrison family following them. But they weren't walking on the sand anymore. They were walking above it. Their feet were 3 inches off the ground, and with each step they climbed higher. Walking up invisible stairs into the empty sky, the Rangers made it to their truck. The engine started on the first try, which felt like a miracle. They drove fast, too fast for the sandy trail, but they didn't care. They had to get away, had to get back to the station, had to tell someone what they'd seen. But when they got back and returned with a full search team and the sheriff's department, everything had changed. The Morrison family was there, right where the Rangers had found the mummified body. But they were alive, completely alive, sitting in the sand, confused and dehydrated, but alive. They had no memory of being missing. According to them, they'd only been hiking for 30 minutes. They got tired and sat down to rest. That was it. But they'd been gone for 7 hours. Their phones showed the wrong time. Their GPS showed they'd never left the parking area. Their cameras had photos of places that didn't exist. Desert landscapes with 2 suns. Rock formations that bent in impossible ways. And in every photo, shadows of things that weren't there. The family was taken to the hospital. Physically, they were fine. Dehydrated, sunburned, but fine. But there were things that weren't right. Their shadows were wrong. In certain light, their shadows showed different people. Older people, younger people. Sometimes things that weren't people at all. And their eyes, when you looked at them from the right angle, would turn black. Just for a second. Just long enough to make you doubt what you saw. Rachel tried to file a report about what really happened. But her supervisor told her she was suffering from heat exhaustion. That she'd hallucinated. That all 4 Rangers had experienced a shared delusion brought on by the extreme heat. The official report says they found the Morrison family suffering from mild heat stroke. Nothing more. But Rachel knows what she saw. She knows those things that looked like the Morrison family weren't human. She knows that somewhere in Death Valley, there's a place where time breaks, where something can take you, age you, kill you, and bring you back all at the same time. She quit 3 weeks later. So did Mike. James transferred to a park in Oregon. Lisa stopped being a ranger entirely. None of them could stay in Death Valley. None of them could look at those sand dunes without remembering the Morrison family still posts on social media. Happy photos. Normal life. But if you look closely at their photos, really closely, you can see it. Their eyes sometimes reflect things that aren't there. Their shadows point the wrong direction. And sometimes, in the background, there are footprints in places they haven't walked. Rachel told me one more thing before I left. She said that every night since that day, she has the same dream. She's back in Death Valley. The Morrison family is there, mummified again, sitting in their circle. They look at her with those black eyes and say, "The door is still open. We're still waiting. Time doesn't work here. You'll be back. You're already here. You never left." She wakes up screaming every night. And sometimes, when she looks in the mirror, her own eyes are black, just for a second. Just long enough to know that whatever happened to the Morrison family, it's not over. It's never over. The desert doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. And once it touches you, once it shows you what's behind the door, you're marked. Forever. Rachel moved to Alaska but she still finds sand in her shoes. Sand from Death Valley, fresh sand, every morning, like something is reminding her, calling her back. She won't go back. She can't, because she knows what's waiting there. In the hottest place on earth, in the place where time breaks and people can be dead and alive at the same time. Something that wears human faces but isn't human. Something that speaks with stolen voices. Something that walks above the sand and climbs invisible stairs into the sky. Something that's still waiting, still watching, still hungry. So there you have it. 5 true stories from the desert that will haunt your dreams forever. 5 people who went into the desert and came back changed. Or maybe they didn't come back at all. Maybe what came back was something else wearing their skin. Jason and his 6-toed stalker in the Mojave Desert. Those footprints that appeared from nowhere and disappeared into nothing. Whatever followed him that night is still out there, still walking its circles in the sand, still waiting for the next person to camp alone in the wrong place. Sarah and her team in the Sahara, who found that black statue that shouldn't exist, that shadow that moved through their tent. Hassan's eyes that turned black and never changed back. The site is sealed now, but locals still see lights, still hear whispers in languages that hurt to hear. Marcus and Jennifer on Highway 160, meeting something that wore an animal's skin but walked like a man. Something that knew their names without being told. Something that scratched their car with fingers too long to be human. The Navajo know what it was. They've always known, but they won't speak its name. Speaking its name gives it power. Tom, in the Australian Outback, surrounded by things that looked like stretched humans. Things that had been there for thousands of years, painting their stories on cave walls. Things that only come out at night to watch and study and wait. They're still there. In caves no map will ever show. In Rachel in Death Valley, where the Morrison family died and lived at the same time. Where time doesn't work right. Where something can age you 50 years in 5 minutes and bring you back wrong. The door is still open there. It's always been open, and something is waiting on the other side. These aren't ghost stories. These aren't legends. These are things that happened. Things that are still happening right now. While you're safe in your home, watching this video, someone else is out there, in the desert, alone, hearing footsteps that shouldn't exist, seeing shadows that move wrong, meeting things that wear human faces but aren't human. The desert looks empty during the day, just sand and rocks and sun, but it's not empty. It's never been empty. There are things that have lived there since before humans existed. Things that hide in caves and under the sand. Things that only come out when someone is alone and far from help. Every year, hundreds of people go missing in deserts around the world. The official reports blame heat and dehydration and getting lost. But that's not always the truth. Sometimes people find things they shouldn't find. Sometimes they open doors that should stay closed. Sometimes they meet things that don't have names because naming them makes them real. And sometimes they come back, but they come back wrong. They look the same, sound the same, but something is different. Something is missing, or something extra has been added. They have dreams about places that don't exist. They know things they shouldn't know. They cast shadows that don't match their bodies. If you ever find yourself in the desert, remember these stories. Remember that you're never really alone out there. Something is always watching, always waiting, always hungry. Stay on the main roads. Don't camp alone. Don't investigate strange sounds or lights. Don't follow footprints that appear from nowhere. Don't touch things that look ancient. Don't speak to things that wear human faces but move wrong. And if you hear your name called in the desert wind, don't answer. It's not the wind. It's never just the wind. The desert remembers everything. Every person who's ever walked across it. Every secret that's been buried in it. Every scream that's echoed across its empty spaces. It remembers and it waits and it watches. Right now, as you're listening to this, somewhere in a desert, someone is experiencing something they can't explain. Something that will haunt them forever. Something that will make them move far away and still wake up screaming years later. Something that science says is impossible, but is happening anyway. The desert doesn't care about science. It doesn't care about logic. It exists by its own rules, ancient rules. Rules we've forgotten, but that still apply to anyone brave enough or foolish enough to venture too far from safety. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to these stories that needed to be told. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more true horror stories. Leave a comment if you've had your own unexplained experience. Share this video with someone who thinks the desert is just empty sand. But whatever you do, after watching this, don't go to the desert alone. Don't test these stories. Don't try to find these places, because some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Some things, once seen, can never be unseen. And some places mark you forever. The desert is patient. It's been waiting for millions of years. It can wait a little longer. It can wait for you. Sleep well tonight, if you can. And remember, every time you close your eyes, somewhere in the darkness of the desert, something opens its eyes, something that shouldn't exist, something that knows you've been listening, something that knows where you are. Sweet dreams.